Hello and welcome back everyone to the Powder Toy, and today we're going to go over all the different kinds of tsunamis that you need to be prepared against, and we're going to rank them from 0 to 10. As always, join Valor.gg if you want to talk to me and give suggestions for next video ideas. I always do listen. Also, leave a comment down below, like and subscribe. But let's go ahead and start out with the simple tsunami, the saltwater tsunami. Actually, deleting that caused a little bit of a tsunami. Alright, so when there is a literal tsunami, and this is not the most realistic way to simulate a tsunami, but it's the best I can do without crashing it. When there is a saltwater tsunami, it's gonna cover the city in water. The salt water is going to corrode the buildings, and it's going to, in real life, the pressure of the water would cause major damage, but in the powder toy, that isn't really simulated, and so not much is really going to happen. We are going to have our little lithium factory here that I added to the map, which is going to react with the water and heat up a little bit, which is kind of neat. And other than that, the salt water is degrading the buildings a little bit, but you'll notice it's not that dramatic. So a normal water tsunami, I am going to give a 1 out of 10. Yeah, it's a tsunami, but like, come on guys, we can do better than this. Also, credit to the guy who made the original city map, Thanatos. I just modified it for use in this video. Alright, so we're gonna go on to the second kind of tsunami, which is, of course, the very common, very relatable Molten Wax Tsunami. So if you find yourself in a Molten Wax Tsunami situation, you should just remember one thing. Technically, wax is kind of edible, so if you gotta chew yourself out, that's fine, and it's completely understandable. This wax is actually going to form a shell around all of the material it touches as it cools down, legitimately creating a giant bar of soap out of your city. Maybe you guys smelled bad and you needed it, but I can't really recommend the Molten Wax Tsunami. It's gonna get a 2 out of 10. It's a big mess. In order to get out of it, you need to like set off explosives in order to heat it back up. I mean, let's go ahead and just pour some nitroglycerin on here. Yeah, we can melt it again so that you can escape. I really do not suggest getting caught in the wax though, because you kind of get stuck in place and it's the most claustrophobic thing you'll ever experience. So 2 out of 10 for the Wax Tsunami. Alright, so next kind of tsunami that you can run into is the liquid rubidium tsunami. The liquid rubidium tsunami is pretty major. As long as there's no water nearby, you're fine. But the moment your neighbor turns on the sprinkler, well, a little water comes into the equation, you're going to notice what happens. That sprinkler has doomed everyone in the city. You have all just been burst into flame, and considering most human beings do require some water, there's a high chance that someone in your city is going to get you all killed. So liquid rubidium tsunami is going to get a 4 out of 10 because it can be a real bummer when it occurs. I do suggest listening to the news if a liquid rubidium tsunami is coming your way, just getting out of there. Now, I'm American, so the next tsunami we are going to simulate is the oil tsunami. The oil tsunami has pros and cons. The pro is if you put out a few containers that can hold oil and won't just dissolve, you can make a lot of money off of the oil tsunami. I mean, look at Texas. That's basically their economy. The downside of the oil tsunami is that if someone lights a cigarette, it's very similar to the rubidium situation. A bit slower burning, so you have a few seconds to escape instead of milliseconds, but definitely not something that you're going to get out of if, for some reason, any spark and/or fire source occurs in your city. Also, the oil has a tendency to turn into fumes when the pressure changes, and you don't want to deal with the fumes. They get everywhere, and then they catch on fire. It's just a hard time. So the oil tsunami is going to get a 5 out of 10. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, but it's not the worst. It's not nearly the worst. Actually, I think the worst kind of tsunami, the one that you really need to watch out for, Actually, we're gonna save that till the end. Next up, let's go ahead and do the next tsunami, which is going to be, where is it? I'm looking for it. Well, we'll do the Mercury Tsunami next. So the Mercury Tsunami is really interesting because Mercury is so dense that it's actually going to replace the ground in a lot of places and push up the ground. So the Mercury Tsunami actually acts kind of like a earthquake at the same time. Also, Mercury is highly toxic and conductive. So as you can see, the nuclear power plant under the ground is now electrifying all of the ground, and you're probably going to die. The Mercury Tsunami has like 4 different ways to kill you, between it being toxic, the electricity, and moving the ground, and just burying you. The Mercury Tsunami is very dangerous. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, which is pretty high up in the rankings here. Now, the next tsunami is caused by, well, thermite. Technically, thermite is a solid until it's lit, but we're going to go ahead and light it so that we can see the tsunami ramifications. So a thermite tsunami is bad. It's quite bad. The insane temperature of thermite means that it will literally just cut through anything in its path, kind of like a Dallas driver. And it will melt the ground. It will basically dissolve everything physically capable of being dissolved. The only thing about the thermite tsunami is that there are a few ways to slow down the destruction. The first off is you can try to use water or something to just carry that heat off, because thermite does work primarily via heat. And the second thing is, if you're in a bunker under the ground, say like this nuclear power plant, you'll notice it hasn't touched it. Bunker chads will survive the thermite incident, potentially, depending on how far down the heat penetrates. So thermite is going to get a 9 out of 10 when it comes to tsunami. I would not want to be caught in the middle of a thermite tsunami. It's one of the most deadly. But there is one thing that is worse. The acid tsunami is definitely the worst kind of tsunami. When you have an acid tsunami, not only do you have to worry about drowning, burning to death, and literally everything around you just slowly crumbling. The acid is also flammable. So there's many ways for this to go wrong. And the acid is going to eat through the ground and penetrate into those deep bunkers. So if you have a bunker that's not like covered in acid-proof glass or something along those lines, as you can see, the acid has already worked its way into the oil down here. It's going through the buildings. Sure, it's not quite as flashy as the thermite, but it's doing much more damage. Much more damage. And the kind of damage it's doing, it's not just like, oh, it melted, it burned. No, it's literally on a molecular level ripping everything apart that it touches. Given enough time, this will get all the way down into the nuclear power plant, and as you can see, a little bit of heat has caused the acid to catch fire in a few areas. And this is kind of the secondary thing about the acid. Acid being flammable means that at some point, not only is it going to chemically burn you, it's also going to actually burn you once somebody lights a match. It looks like it hasn't quite happened yet, but it's basically eaten through all the buildings, only leaving the glass. And that's another problem. If all the buildings are eaten and all that's left is the windows are going to fall and there's just going to be broken glass everywhere. So you're going to be swimming through acid and broken glass, which really is not a good thing. Generally, I prefer to not swim through broken glass. It's just very uncomfortable. It's just not my cup of tea. The entire thing is just an entire mess. And then boom, look, it caught on fire. And now you also have to deal with your city burning down on top of being eaten by a ridiculous amount of acid. I mean, there's just too many things you have to worry about with an acid tsunami where it becomes unmanageable. I mean, legitimately, there's nothing left except for the windows. And sure, Microsoft may be fine with that, but most people can't survive on only Windows. So yeah, out of all the tsunamis, the acid tsunami wins the worst tsunami award, and I hope you've all learned something today. I learned a lot today about tsunami safety. And then for those of you who wanted to see the soap tsunami, we can just really quickly do a soap tsunami. Soap tsunamis are good for like gamer conferences and stuff where you really do need that nice soaps to clean things up. You know, you got sweaty, no deodorant situation. But the soap tsunami is also really hard to clean because you try to pour water on it and then it makes just suds. And then you just kind of suffocate in millions of bubbles. So it's not the worst thing, really. It's far from the worst thing, but I'm gonna give it like a 2 out of 10 because the danger factor is very low, but I just don't really see the point in a soap tsunami most of the time. Virus tsunami is interesting as well. I don't know if it's really a tsunami. Oh, wait, virus can't survive with soap. The virus tsunami is very simple. It just eats everything in its path. So I don't even know if it's a tsunami because it doesn't really move like a liquid. It just eats everything in its path. Although when it heats up, it does become a liquid. So I don't know. Tsunami experts in the comments, you can argue on whether or not the virus tsunami is an actual tsunami. It can cause some real damage if it melts, because then even if you cure it, you'll be so mixed up, your arm will be like where your leg should be, among other issues. And it's flammable, so it's really challenging. Yeah. Alright, you know what? Maybe the virus tsunami should get a really high score as well. This is almost as bad as acid. I mean, it melts you and then it unmelts you, but like you're gonna be all mixed up. Yeah, turning you into a liquid is pretty bad. So that gets up there as well. And there's this gray goo, which is definitely probably the worst because it just eats the entire universe and there is no escape. It even beats virus out. So thank you for watching this short and thorough investigation into the different tsunami types. I hope you've learned something and will protect yourself in the next natural disaster. I will see you all next time. Let me know in the comments below or on valor.gg what you want to see next. Peace out.